Think you caught everything in episode 1? We thought we did too. Until we watched it again. Hidden symbols, background details, blink and you'll miss it moments. And a few clues that could completely change where this season is headed. If you love Silo and don't want to miss the details everyone else is overlooking, hit like, subscribe, and join the couch crew. Let's break down every clue we found.
So let's get into it, and we'll talk about Juliette and her memory.
Yeah, so this episode starts with her a couple months after she gets back into the silo, and she does not remember anything. Who she is, what happened, what she saw out there.
It was such an intense ending of season 2. Like, I cannot imagine. They were essentially in an oven. So the fact that she happened to have a flame retardant suit on and was able to survive is incredible. And I think that's part of why everyone's just accepting the fact that she wouldn't remember. But in all honesty, like, what would have happened to her that would take away her memory? Unless it was being intentionally manipulated.
Yeah, and we see by the end of that first episode that Camilla says they are, removing her memory on purpose, and she's talking to that voice or that AI, and she's saying, it's working, and she doesn't remember anything. But the question that we think we saw a clue for was, how are they affecting her memory?
Because she's willingly taking 2 pills every day. But it couldn't be that easy. Like, she was able to pull apart and pull the strings at so many different lies and secrets. I don't think they could trust her just taking the pill.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you watch those scenes. It happens twice, and they take a second and they focus on the pills themselves, but then they go and they focus on the faucet. And I think it's interesting that there was a comment made in season 2 where they say, they can affect your memory with the water. And I think that was kind of that moment, that little tell to the audience. You think it's the pills, but it's actually the water.
And one of the big things that we noticed from this episode was how the silo repaired itself after the rebellion, and how they've actually gone and changed their entire leadership structure by forming the council.
Yeah, and I think the big clue this season is definitely the rumblings that while on the surface it seems as though they've gone through this huge reform and they've changed their structure, and it used to be Bernard in charge, now it's this council. We quickly throughout this episode see the cracks already there.
Yeah, it's just a facade. In the way that it's structured, they have a representative from every single department, I think even from every level, and it sounds like they each get a voice. Like, they're able to speak up on what they're dealing with, if they need any support, things like that. But there's very little willingness to act, and specifically when the man is talking about the tunnels underneath.
Yeah, you see Juliette, who has no memory, and she's really kind of just this figurehead. She's not part of the real leadership within. She's saying, maybe we can change the pact and expand the tunnels. You're totally right. Great idea. And we hear a lot of silence from the Sims. And it's interesting that they're listening to this information and these suggestions, but it's pretty clear they're not going to take them, and it's more just to say they listened.
There's even hints or a conversation about the pact being rewritten, but it was very obvious that certain pieces they're not going to touch.
Yeah, and we see Paul Billings. He's this deputy sheriff that believed so much in the pact, and he was there saying, in the last season, I'm not on your side, I'm not on your side, I'm on the side of the pact, and my job is to uphold the pact. And it was kind of that first sign of how deeply ingrained in society those laws were, especially in him. And now you could see throughout this whole episode, he was very withdrawn, not very involved in this meeting, and he's the one tasked with rewriting it. And every time they mention that, he kind of gets quiet, because I think in his mind, he's thinking, if we can just rewrite it, did it hold any value? And if I've spent my whole life studying and memorizing this pact just for us to throw it out the window, what else am I believing in and following that doesn't actually have any legs to stand on or doesn't actually have the longevity that we think it has? And so I think we see that kind of unraveling in him particularly throughout this episode.
Yeah, and I think we also see that there is still some distrust in the citizens, right? Like, there's definitely some animosity, at least on the surface level, between the mechanical guy and the guy the lady from supplies. But there's also hints that maybe they are secretly working together.
Yeah, you see them have kind of like a little scuffle on the stairs, and they grab each other's arms at one point, and the camera kind of focuses on that for a second. So I don't know if it was actually animosity or if maybe they were trading a note. We've seen that be used another case this episode with Juliette, but especially in previous seasons, this art of kind of slipping the notes to each other in different ways to communicate. And I think there's a lot that happened on surface in this episode that seemed very happy and like a way forward. But I think that might have been another clue that that rebellion's still happening. They've just learned and they're keeping it a little bit quieter this time.
It's clear that Camille is the one who's talking now with the AI computer. And they were originally giving advice on what to do to suppress a rebellion. It sounds like she received some instructions on what do you do to rebuild after, and part of forming this council was to fulfill that.
And that's why I think Juliette's at the head of it. And she doesn't have the memory, she doesn't have the ability to fight back. And, we know she came to the silo with a plan that she got from Solo about how to stop that suppression. And how to stop them from being able to put poison back into the silo. We don't know how much Camille actually knows about that, right? We know that they removed Juliette's memories, but what do they know about that themselves? And how does that factor into what they're trying to hide?
Because I think that leads into the next big question from this episode. At the end of season 2, we saw the AI computer telling Sims to go outside with his son. And then all of a sudden in season 3, episode 1, that computer is only talking to Camille. We know Sims is back in or never left, so I'm very curious to see what happened. Did he break the trust? Or did he actually go out and fulfill? Why was his son supposed to go out? Like, there's so many questions that arise from that.
Yeah, and we see another kind of time where Sims is really kind of being fake in that council meeting where he's saying, we have Juliette and she came back and she's the only one, that to be sworn in from the bed and to become mayor, and he's all like happy about it. And then afterwards, when he's actually talking to her again on the stairs, he says, I wish you could remember when you held my wife and son hostage. And you could see that animosity coming back. So he's definitely part of the plan somehow.
Yeah.
But how much does he actually know? And then I think the last big clue we get is actually a passing comment about Lukas, Kyle, and Patrick Kennedy being on the run.
So they're obviously somewhere important. Whether they're in the below area that they're trying to seal off, or they actually went out, because remember, Lukas Kyle went through that tunnel. It's still unknown to us, but they were definitely seeding that we should be thinking about where they are.
Yeah, and Lukas Kyle is the one who, whatever he heard from that voice, he brings to Bernard, and then Bernard essentially goes to kill himself. And to try to go out of the silo for one moment of peace before it's done, right? And you see how rattled they both are. So whatever he heard clearly has an effect on the silo as a whole. And you have to imagine that for Lukas Kyle to go into hiding he's planning something.
Yeah, or he's involved in something bigger than he knows. Because they also talked a little bit about supplies going missing. And they said it was from construction. But what if Lucas, Kyle, and Kennedy were organizing some sort of mission and they needed to get their supplies up?
Because we know Patrick Kennedy is a relics dealer, right? So he's the guy that knows where things are, where to find them, and has some idea of what these things could do. So if Lucas Kyle was tasked with finding something or, doing more of that research, Kennedy would be the guy that he would need. So it definitely interesting. It was kind of just said in passing. I'm sure we're going to touch on them at some point, a couple episodes down the line, see where they are and what they're doing. But it definitely seemed like just a little tidbit of, hey, don't forget them. They're coming back.
Yeah, and there's something big happening.
And they're doing something important. Those are all the clues we caught on our second watch. But if there's one thing we've learned about Silo, it's that nothing is ever shown by accident. Every symbol, every background detail, and every conversation could mean something much bigger later on. Now it's your turn, Couch Crew. What clue stood out to you? Did you catch something we missed? Or is there a theory starting to take shape after episode 1? Drop it in the comments because we read every single one, and your theory might even inspire our next deep dive. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and join the Couch Crew. Every new clue brings us one step closer to solving the mystery, and we'll be here connecting the dots every step of the way. Until next time, keep looking closer, because with Silo, the biggest secrets are usually hiding in plain sight. We'll catch you on the couch. Talk to you soon. Bye.